market just descends dramatically. And in reality, if the internet, the actual carriage, the bits carriage of the internet, which is all that it does, is a public utility, its cost, the cost to carry stuff on it is almost zero. So nobody can really make any money out of it. It should really be like the streets and the roads. And the last thing from this list I'll speak to is a favorite topic. And this reminds me, I haven't introduced my colleague Gary Sherman, who I'm now about to introduce. This is Gary Sherman. Gary's the president and co-founder of the Victoria Freenet. How many people in here got their first email account ever from a Freenet? Anybody? There's one back there. Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. Well, Freenet still exists. And it works with social service agencies because in an online economy, the digital divide is a problem that cannot be solved. If it's an internet economy, there are people who are marginal to that economy. And part of the reason they're marginal is because you have to have internet skills in order to function in that economy. The degree to which social service agencies now are spending time with people in terms of online skills is truly astonishing and unexpected. And we haven't really been funded for this massive shift in the way in which they support people. That's digital inclusion, and the Freenet works with and supports those organizations. And we believe, and Gary and I have argued throughout CRD, that open municipal networks will have major advantages in terms of being able to support and sustain digital inclusion. Next slide. This slide, like the last one, is kind of a checklist, and I would love to go through it item by item because this is the one everybody really cares about. It's where's the money? There's lots of money. I'm not going to go through it to be merciful in terms of time, but there's lots of money. Let me give you one example. Burlington, Vermont, population 39,000, is on schedule for a positive free cash flow by late next year. And they own their own network as a municipal utility. When they get to positive cash flow, then they'll begin paying down their capital costs. Now, they did it as a one-shot project, and it cost $30 million. There's serious dollars involved if you approach it in that way, and I don't think you need to approach it in that way. But they believe that they will rapidly pay down that debt, that the amortization of that debt will occur fairly rapidly. Their projections are that when they have done that, 20% of the general revenue of Burlington, Vermont will come from the operation of the network. So let's say you had a tax base and then you spent your $30 million and you had an open network and you increased your revenue by 20% from non-tax revenue. I mean, why not? Anyway, a task force. Next one. These are some of the questions that a task force is going to have to address in order to give the elected politicians of View Royal a real picture of what the consequences of moving in this direction are ultimately going to be. And I'm sure that there are other questions as well. And we haven't had any contact with the citizens of View Royal over this, but I really think that public participation in terms of talking about this idea with people will also surface uses and interests and perspectives that we hadn't considered that need to be taken into account. So finding a public voice or forums for this is going to be part of the task force as well. So this is a list that's going to change. But in particular, I want to spend, not yet I don't, yes I do, I want to spend a bit of time on what's at the top there, the governance model. Next slide. The key factor on this slide is the statement at the bottom. Public ownership of physical network does not necessarily mean the city either manages the network or provides services. It turns out that the question of who owns the network and who operates what is actually fairly critical to the way in which you might structure it and operate it and the secrets of gaining those kinds of revenues that I gave in the example. Next slide. So in effect, the best way to approach this from the experience of communities that are involved in it is to split the imagining of how this works into three levels. The physical layer, which is the conduit, and fiber, which is transporting the bits. The second one is an operational layer, which is the network management layer. And the third one is what you actually do on it. Now the revenue and the key is not in the transportation of the bits. It's in the third layer. It's in the new markets that are created. It's in the spaces for the Eliza Blocks of this world to say, I don't have to ask anybody to start a new global business and just go ahead and do it. And instead of becoming a student with debts in your community, become a producer who's spending hard-earned cash to upgrade your apartment. There are a number of models, and they're scattered throughout municipalities now, and there's experiences and lessons from all of them. You can create an IT department that does this. You can say to a corporation, we'll give you access rights and all sorts of things if you'll do some stuff for us on the other side. You can enter a public-private partnership. And we intend to also ask the question about a public partnership, because we really feel that the network operator needs to be a community-based organization, some kind of not-for-profit. And so we intend to put that into our exploration of options. So far then are that the questions of ownership and governance are a bit more complex and risky than we might have thought, and they need to be carefully thought through. Secondly, it's going to be a long-term kind of thing. Thirdly, and I haven't really talked about this, but wireless is really not an option. If you have a fiber-backed network, it's really, the amazing thing is that wireless hot zones will start to grow themselves and you won't have to pay a thing for them. But you can the Freddie network in Fredericton, which is a free wireless zone in the middle of the city, is able to be built by Fredericton because they own an optical network for the city. The optical network was already there. In almost every case where a United States municipality has tried a public-private partnership saying, well, we'll let you come in and build the wireless network, the wireless operator has finally walked away from the project without actually implementing it, because when they realize the internet is actually a utility, they see they can't make any money out of it. And so they're backing off. Those projects are failing. There are, by the way, over 400 municipalities in the United States now that are experimenting with various takes on this. So anyway, my final slide, I've got a quote here from a US broadband study that basically says, this is something we can do as citizens. We can take this into our own hands. There's nobody who can stop us, just like nobody can stop Eliza if she was on the open network. Up until recently, most people involved in public service in Canada didn't spend much time thinking about the uses of the internet for development in terms of municipal responsibility. I think that's beginning to change. I think that there's more of that occurring, bubbling away underneath than we're aware. I've tried to give you a kind of a high-speed, state-of-the-art review of what the status of that municipal uptake is and where some of the critical issues are. And I admit that in terms of the full implementation of an open network as a municipal utility, I don't think there is a good example yet. So you all, if they keep moving forward, might even be first. But ViewRoyal has already made a beginning with this, and Emmett gave me these figures. He says that they're including ducts in the ground in every project, that the cost of doing that is less than 0.5% of a project, and that the developers pay that because they have absolutely no problems with the concept. So it's possible to say, $300 million development project, you're going to put in conduit and fiber optics, but you're going to operate that, not as something that is part of an open network for our municipality, as an amenity, and they'll love you because they have to spend that money anyway. So when you realize that the Elizabeth Blocks of the world give us an advance warning of what an ordinary citizen is about to look like, I don't think it's too soon for us all to have these kinds of strategies in place, so I encourage the other municipalities